all the way back in the law, back in Deuteronomy. And it tells the Israelites you're going to have a king that's given to them, appointed by the Lord himself. You go back even a little farther, Balaam, when he was trying to curse the children of Israel, he said that there would be a king coming. And then you go all the way back to Abraham. When God was speaking to Abraham, he told him that from him and Sarah there would be kings for the nation of Israel. So it goes all the way back to the book of Genesis. Well, when we get to chapter number 3 in the book of Ruth, we find steps that have been taken that are going to provide that king. And of course, we know that that is going to be the marriage of Boaz and Ruth. And that's what we're kind of looking at here. So when we pick up again, I wasn't kidding, we're going to go back to verse number 1. When we pick up in chapter number 3 and verse number 1, we find Naomi, where then Naomi, her mother-in-law, said unto her, My daughter, shall I not seek rest for thee, that it may be well with thee? Now, Naomi, when you go back to chapter number 1, had basically said this same thing to Ruth and Orpah, that I want you to have rest. And that means basically I want good things for you. I want the best for you. And Naomi hasn't changed. Now, Naomi may have been backslidden. Naomi may have been out in the far country, out living in the world. But her heart, for those she loved, was in the right place. And she is looking for Ruth to find the best that she can get. Now, it goes on. It said in verse number 2, And now is not Boaz of our kindred, with whose maidens thou wast. Behold, he winnoweth barley tonight in the threshing floor. Wash thyself therefore, and anoint thee, and put thy raiment upon thee, and get thee down to the floor. Now, one thing that we didn't talk about before, but it kind of stands out, where she says, And put thy raiment upon thee. Okay? Let's see. Make sure I said that right. And put thy raiment upon thee. Now, it's pretty obvious to know that Ruth was wearing clothes. Why would she tell her to put thy raiment upon thee? What kind of clothes do you think Ruth had been wearing?
Work clothes.
Huh?
Work clothes. Possibly.
Now think about it. Let's get the big picture here. Boaz knows that he is next of kin. We've talked about how Boaz has had his eye on Ruth. But Boaz has never made any sort of advancement or any sort of indication that he has any type of interest in Ruth other than leaving her some handfuls on purpose, letting her eat at the table, and watching out for her. He's never done anything out of the way or any advancement toward a marriage proposal. But Ruth, she makes that proposal to Boaz. Why has Boaz just been sitting back not doing anything?
She's in mourning.
She has been in mourning. Okay? Now, it's basically come to a point in time where it's time for her to stop mourning and to start living her life again. Looking for a husband, looking for a family, looking for a home. And Naomi has reached that point where that is going to be, where seek rest for thee that it may be well with thee. The time has come for her to make that decision, to stop that mourning process, and to take the steps to reach out to find a husband. Now, Naomi tells Ruth to watch where Boaz goes after he's full from supper. Watch where he lays down and goes to sleep. And then Ruth needs to go over there and uncover his feet and lie down. And Naomi is confident that Boaz is going to do the right thing. And she tells Ruth that once you do that, Boaz is going to tell you what you need to do. Now that's kind of what we talked about and where we got to last time. But what is Naomi's motivation?
Why is Naomi wanting all of this to happen?
She's wanting her to get married and have a job.
Wants her to get married and have a child. Anything else? Why else?
Have a good living, I guess.
Huh?
Have a good living.
Have a good living. Yep.
She and Naomi both will be taken care of.
So they would be both taken care of. Okay. Anything else maybe? Now, Naomi wants Ruth to see if Boaz will marry her. Okay? Now, the ultimate goal is for them to have a good living, for them to find joy, to be taken care of for both of them. But the first step, Naomi's intention is to put Boaz on the spot and say, hey, will you marry her? That's what it comes down to. She's wanting to put him on the spot and have him answer that question. But why? Why do you think? Well, it does seem to be, if we think about it, it's a little strange for Naomi to send Ruth to propose to Boaz. Now, in our society, it is a little strange. But in their society, it was common and it was the right of Ruth to walk up to Boaz and say, hey, I want you to marry me. That was her right by law. Now, you go back to, I think it's Leviticus chapter 25 and verse 25. It kind of tells you some about the requirements of the kinsman redeemer. But God had a plan when they went into the land of Canaan. And they began to distribute all the land when Joshua got the instructions to distribute all the land to the 12 tribes of Israel. God had a plan laid out that land that family got would stay with that family throughout all time. Now, there was trouble that could come to a family. If all of the sons died, then who would be left to carry on the inheritance? So God, looking out for that and knowing that that might happen, He prepared a way for that land to stay in the family. You remember when King Ahab saw that vineyard that Naboth owned? And he offered to buy that from Naboth, and Naboth said, no, that this is my inheritance, this is my family's land, that I won't sell. And then what happened? Ahab or Jezebel had him killed, and then they got the vineyard. Well, he knew the importance of maintaining his inheritance. Now, if all of the men in the family died, and there's no sons to take the place, then basically it would end up belonging to some other family, or it might fall to some other tribe. But it was God's intention that it stayed in there. And if they all died, God anticipated that, and what He said is if the son died, then the wife was supposed to go to the next one in line and marry them and raise up a child in the name of the dead son, or the one that had passed away. So anybody know whose Ruth's husband was? Who was Ruth married to? Mahlon or Chilion? Mahlon. Yep. Now, Mahlon died. So who was the next one in line? Chilion. What happened to Chilion? Chilion died. They came back to the land of Bethlehem, Judah, and in everybody's mind, in Naomi's mind, in Ruth's mind, who was the next of kin? Nope, Boaz.
Oh,
Yeah,
had to be a man.
had to be a man. Yep. Yeah, because the men back in that society were the landowners. It was in their name. So Boaz was the next of kin. So that gets us to this point here where Naomi, to keep her land, to get it bought back, because when they left
They sold their property or they mortgaged their property, so it was in the possession of somebody else. So when they came back, in order to get that land or get that, they had to marry the next one in line to legally get their property back. All right. Now, is there some obligation that Boaz has? Is Boaz obligated in that culture to marry Ruth? Is he obligated, or is it just of his free will?
His free.
Obligated to marry Ruth or free will?
She said free will.
Uh-huh. Anybody else got a thought? Is Boaz a godly man? Is Boaz an individual that wants to do what God said? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. All right. If he is a godly man and he wants to do what God said, then he is obligated to marry Ruth if he meets all the criteria. Okay? Now, the criteria is you have to be next to kin, you have to have the resources, and you have to be willing. Okay? So free will does play a part in it. But he's obligated to, if he meets that criteria, to marry her. All right? Now, anybody remember a little hiccup in the story? We haven't gotten that far yet, but if you've looked ahead, Boaz, he's next to kin, or he is kin. He has the resources. He is willing, but he says, hey, there's a problem. What's the problem?
There was another lady.
One closer.
One closer.
There's one closer. Now, I don't know if anybody else knew that or not, other than Boaz, but remember what I told you to start with? Boaz, he hasn't made any sort of attempt, any sort of advancement. He hasn't made any indication that he is interested in marrying Ruth. Maybe because it's just the mourning clothes. But maybe he also knows, and he hasn't made any attempt, because he is not the closest kinsman. So he's just kind of, hey, this other guy, he's obligated to step up and to marry this lady and to raise up a child. So we're going to jump ahead just a second. He goes and he makes this proposal to him, but what happens? He's interested till he finds out he has to marry. Yeah. When he finds out he has to marry, he says, And he takes off his shoe, hands it to Boaz, says, I turn it all over to you, she's yours. She's all in your hands. All right. Anybody have any, we'll get back to the lesson in a minute. Anybody have any idea what the closest kinsman represents spiritually? Or in life?
Jesus?
Nope. Jesus is our kinsman redeemer. That's a picture of Boaz. The law. The law. Okay? Now, the law is the Old Testament law. The law brings out our failures. The law, when we look at it in comparison to our life, it shows our shortcomings. The law is a list of rules and requirements that an individual must live by, but yet we can't quite measure up. You think about Ruth. Who is Ruth? Where's she from? She's being referred to as Ruth the Moabitess. Yeah. And when the law looks at her, what does he see? He sees someone whose people are cursed. Cursed by God. So if you think about it, the law is a lot like a Pharisee. It looks down on everybody else and it's elevated. Okay? So that is how the law, that's how that closest kinsman looked at Ruth. She's that Moabitess.
Not going to get anywhere associated with her. I'm going to keep my hands clean. Okay? All right. I don't have any idea where we got to. Anybody questions? All right. Now, I'm sorry. Question?
Verse 4, I think.
Okay. All right. Verse 4. And it shall be, when he lieth down, that thou shalt mark the place where he shall lie, and thou shalt go in and uncover his feet and lay thee down, and he will tell thee what to do. I read one commentary when I was studying this week that it said when says uncover his feet. Now, this is toward the end of barley harvest, which is getting over in the fall, and he I don't know if he was serious or just kind of joking around, but he said what she did was she uncovered his feet so that his bare feet was outside of the cover, knowing that he would wake up eventually because his feet would get cold. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's probably a good thought. He said, just try that with your spouse at your own peril and see if they won't wake up eventually. So, anyway, there's just that. Now, Boaz, he is quite a catch. So when Naomi tells Ruth to seek him out, he's a serious, godly man during a time where there's a lot of wicked individuals around. Because remember, this is a time of the judges. And Naomi, she has full confidence in Boaz because she makes that statement, he will tell thee what thou shalt do. So she tells Ruth to go to him, and when she does, he's going to tell her what to do next. But, verse 5, and she said unto her, all that thou sayest unto me, I will do. She went down into the floor and did according to all that her mother-in-law bade her. And when Boaz had eaten and drunk, and his heart was merry, he went to lie down at the end of the heap of corn. And she came softly and uncovered his feet and laid her down. Why the secrecy? Why wait till he'd gone to sleep? Why wait till nobody else was looking? Why the secrecy?
It appears that we don't know.
Women wasn't supposed to be in there, were they?
No, women weren't supposed to be on the threshing floor. Now, Naomi thinks she knows that Boaz is next in line. But Boaz hasn't made any kind of advancement or acknowledgement. Maybe we talked about because of the mourning clothes. Maybe we've talked about because he knows somebody else is closer in line. But Ruth here, during this custom and time, she goes up to him when nobody else is around, when nobody else can put any pressure on him, when nobody else is watching. I think the secrecy is to put him on this spot with the least amount of pressure. She's going to know. He's going to know. He's going to make a decision. She'll accept that decision. So she goes and she does all that Naomi tells her to do. And then we find in verse number 8, and it came to pass at midnight. So he had been laying there, finally, that the man was afraid and turned himself, and behold, a woman lay at his feet. And he said, Who art thou? And she answered, I am Ruth thy handmaid. Spread therefore thy skirt over thine handmaid, for thou art a near kinsman.
What's that? What was that seeming like that he didn't have pants on, at least?
Actually, that is a tradition of protection. When you put the skirt over somebody, it was basically the hem of the garment. That is a sign that you are going to protect and provide. It comes from the same phrase as being put under the wing. You remember when Jesus told the parable about the the hen and the chicks, how they cover them. That's the same phrasing right there. And that having that skirt. Actually today, when a Jewish man marries a Jewish woman, during the wedding ceremony, he will take his shawl and put it over her shoulder, signifying that she is his to protect and watch out for and provide for. And that is what she is asking for. She is asking him to be her protector, her provider, because he is. She's asking him. She is saying, Boaz, marry me.
But how was he
Redeem me.
dressed?
Huh?
How was he dressed? I mean, what was his formal?
Oh, he would have had on formal clothing then would have been the robe, like traditionally you'd see.
Road.
Yeah, a robe. Basically they would have a sleeve garment, like a big, what we'd call a robe. What we would call a robe with a belt around it, but a long flowing garment all the way, many times all the way down to the feet. And so they would wrap up in that, and then they would have a blanket or something like that. So when she uncovered his feet, she would be removing that and basically that covering. Yeah. So yeah. All right, in verse 10, and he said, Blessed be thou of the Lord, my daughter. So he's shocked, he's surprised, but he doesn't rebuke her, he blesses her. And as he's blessing her, he says, For thou hast showed more kindness in the latter end than at the beginning. What do you think she's talking about there? You showed more kindness in the latter than in the beginning. What do you think he's talking about?
Well, it goes on to say that he was complimenting her for not choosing the young person to become her.
What'd she do at the beginning? What's she doing at the beginning that he's talking about? She's taking care of her mother-in-law.
Oh, yeah.
Something that she didn't have to do, but she's doing. She's taking care of her. So that's kindness, but he's saying you've done more in the latter end than at the beginning. Now, Boaz is basically saying how unworthy he feels for her to choose him. He said, As thou followest not young men, neither poor nor rich. Which gives us the indication that Boaz is an older individual, because she's not chasing after the young ones. She has come and spoken to him. And now in verse number 11, And now, my daughter, fear not, I will do to thee all that thou requirest. Not just part, but all. Now, knowing Boaz's character, he is going to take care of every single thing that she has asked, and he's not one to put stuff off. He said, For all the city of my people doth know that thou art a virtuous woman. Why are you smiling at me?
She said he wouldn't want to put something off. I said, just thinking a lot of men could take a note from that.
We need to move on.
He didn't put nothing off. She said she was thinking about a lot of them put things off.
I said it's time to move on. All right, where do we get to? Oh, that thou art a virtuous woman. Now that word virtuous is the same wording for hero. Someone of valor. So he is basically recognizing her character, her integrity, and her morality. He said, And now it is true that I am thy near kinsman, howbeit there is a kinsman nearer than I. He says, Tarry this night, and it shall be in the morning, that if he will perform unto thee the part of a kinsman, well, let him do the kinsman part. But if he will not do the part of a kinsman to thee, then will I do the part of a kinsman to thee. As the Lord liveth, lie down until the morning. All right. Can you imagine the anxiety that Ruth must be feeling as she has gone through all of this, and then Boaz tells her, somebody else is a little bit closer than I am. Now, she's got to wait all night. She's got to wait part of the next morning to find out who she's going to be married to. One she knows, one she doesn't. But something is going to happen. And verse 14, and she lay at his feet until the morning, and she rose up before one could know another. And he said, let it not be known that a woman came under the floor. Also he said, bring the veil that thou hast upon thee, and hold it. And when she held it, he measured 6 measures of barley, and laid it on her, and she went into the city. And when she came to her mother-in-law, she said, who art thou, my daughter? And she told her all that the man had done to her. Now, Boaz tells her, wait till the morning, and then get up and go back home. But before she leaves, he gives her 6 measures of barley. Now, one commentator said that was 88 pounds in that veil. Now, can you imagine her taking that back through the town? I can't even hardly imagine walking with that much myself. She must.
She had a pig sack like we used to pick.
She must have been stout. But anyway, she goes back, and what's the question that Naomi asked?
Who art thou?
Why? She obviously knows who her daughter-in-law is.
Well, she might have thought she got married.
That is a good point. You know what she's actually asking?
What happened?
Are you betrothed?
Are you Mrs. Boaz? Yep, that's what she's asking. Are you Mrs. Boaz? And she tells her all that she said. Basically, verse 17, and she said, these 6 measures of barley gave he me, for he said to me, go not empty unto thy mother-in-law. Boaz is a mother-in-law's dream. You know why? Because he's taking care of the daughter, and he has concern for the mother-in-law. He cares about her too. So, verse number 18, then she said, sit still, my daughter, until thou know how the matter will fall. For the man will not be in rest until he have finished the thing this day. So Boaz is not going to stop. They're going to wait, and we'll pick up there next time. Any questions from anybody?
Brendan, why he never told who the other kinsman was?
The name?
Uh-huh.
I don't know.
Probably because that was something he was gonna take care of. She didn't really need to know.
Yeah. Well, I don't know that they were there. There's really
Wasn't anything for her to go ask
Yeah.
him, and he didn't work.
there's really no indication that any of them were worried that the other one was going to play the part.
It seems odd that Naomi didn't realize it was one closer, but he automatically knew.
He knew it all
He'd
along.
already thought about.
Yeah.
Maybe he'd already thought about how it could play out, or
Yeah. Well, it's interesting the way he presents it to the other guy too.
yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't mention Ruth until.
Yeah, right there at the end. Lets the other guy get excited and then says, hey, you got to marry the Moabitess. Yeah.
Well, he hadn't said that much to imply that he was that interested in Ruth on the marriage part thing. And this was God's plan all along, so we can't question that. But I read into the fact that it's that close as a kin had said, yeah, I'll take Ruth, and then it had gone in that direction. I think Boaz would have heard it. I don't think either one was easy, you know.
Well, now, you got to remember that Boaz, a picture of Jesus,
Jesus is by grace are you saved. Now, the other guy, he's the picture of the law. He's going to follow the law to the letter. But when you follow the law to the letter, there has to be that choice that you make as an individual. And that's where he didn't quite cut it. That's where he stopped. Anybody else? I made 2 pages of notes. I made it through 2 pages of notes out of 12.
Good lesson.
Thank you. All right, Brother Jimmy, you dismiss us, please, sir?
Lord, thank you again for this time we have to gather together, worship you, give you praise and glory for all that you do for us each day. We thank you for the rain. We thank you, Lord, for all the blessings that you bless us with. We pray for those that's afflicted with the COVID, those especially that's in the hospital, be with the doctors, nurses, that take care of them. We ask you, Lord, to be with those that are sick at home. Just pray that they'll get well. We pray, Lord, that you just watch over them, that you protect your hand on them. We ask you to be with our family, be with our leaders, be with each person that has anything to do with authority. We ask you, Lord, to go with us and maybe we'll be reminded that we can't even walk without you holding our hand. We depend on you for the leadership and for the guidance and for the healing, for the mercy. We ask you to go with us through the remainder of this week. Give us strength and courage to go on and be with Bobby, with Robert and Mary Francis as they take care of them. They have such a small family, and it makes it even harder to take care of. We ask you to be with them, give them strength and courage to go on. Ask you to be with us, lead, guide, direct us. Go with us wherever we go. In Jesus' precious name, I pray. Amen.
Has Brady Scott them started counting?
Yeah, I did. Monday.
Well, we just relate to this.
No, he don't tell.
Did you use this?
I kept my deputy today, and, so I'm not in the know of all this. We watched videos.
Have a good week.
Okay, you too. I
How's
was
your
trying to find something.
David, was he?
Anyway, there's this guy named Marshall. I take some food to him. He wears a,
Back to work next week, I guess.
wears a Marshall Christians.
He got hit hard at work.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I think he must. He's a DJ. Everything we listened to was clean, but it was just bizarre. Yes, it's marshmallow head.